I'm Kaitlin O'Neil, and I'm going to be presenting on hiring hacked and focusing on LinkedIn. So, how to use LinkedIn like a pro. Awesome. Let's see. Great. So, that's me. I'm the recruiting manager at Bishop Fox. I am a security enthusiast, a yoga teacher, a big science fiction fan, and definitely run on coffee. So you can always message me about hiring, but you can also message me about any of those things as well. Cool. So what I want to talk about today is mostly what recruiters see on LinkedIn. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with what you can see as a user, but unless you're spending thousands of dollars for that recruiter license, you probably don't know what we can see. So that's what I kind of want to cover is give you a little window into what recruiters are using to search so that you can strengthen your own profile so that you come up in more searches, because I think the way the market is shifting, that more and more companies are really relying on the candidates they find. So applying is always awesome, but having the recruiter come to you is definitely a leg up. So why not build the best, the best that we can? Ooh, I see somebody say that my screen is a little blurry. So I think I have the best internet connection that I am gonna have. But I know. Sorry. We'll stick with it, and if the connectivity gets really bad, just let me know, and I'll try to troubleshoot. Awesome. So, what do recruiters see on LinkedIn? We can see job titles, locations, workplace types, skills and assessments, companies, schools, industry, keywords. So there's a ton of stuff. You can see all of that on the left side search bar. So I'll go into a little bit more detail on what that looks like. So one of the top spotlights is open to work. And that is something that you can select on your profile. So I'm sure some of you have seen that with like a highlight on the little banner that shows up on your face. You don't have to go for the full banner to be open to work. I know some people feel good about the banner, some don't. I think it's your call, and I don't think it matters either way. I know some people are also worried about selecting open to work because of how that might look to their employer. LinkedIn says that your employer can't see it when you're open to work. So, like anybody who works at Bishop Fox, if they're open to work, I shouldn't be able to see that on the LinkedIn recruiter side because LinkedIn knows that I work at Bishop Fox and they work at Bishop Fox. So, don't, take me to the bank on this one, but you should be safe to select that as long as you don't put up the banner. And one of the other spotlights we use a lot is are more likely to respond. So the way the LinkedIn algorithm calculates that is, do you respond to the messages you received on LinkedIn? Do you respond to connection requests? So even if you just click the little default LinkedIn not interested, it's still going to show that you interact with the platform. And even if you deny a connection request, it'll show you're interacting, and that'll help you get that are more likely to respond designation. So the little search that I ran had 1,000 people, and out of those 1,000 people, 293 came up as open to work. So for me as a recruiter, looking at 1,000 profiles is a lot of profiles to look at. So looking at 300 is way more appealing. So if you can get connected to one of those spotlights, you have a better chance of your profile being the profile that the recruiter looks at and clicks on. And then we're going to help you make such a good profile that when they click on it, they're going to want to take action. So the other spotlights have company connections. So let's say you're looking at a job at Optiv, but you're connected with me at Bishop Fox, and I have a lot of friends who work at Optiv. That'll probably show up that you're connected. So it helps the larger your network, the more people you're connected to, the more likely you are to show up as have company connections. But the best way to show up under that is to follow the company, connect with employees at the companies you're looking at. So, try to keep it organic, but let's say you're trying to work at Amazon, like AWS is one of the sponsors here, I believe, and they probably had recruiters in the booth. Those recruiters would probably be thrilled if you added them on LinkedIn. Like, bam, now you have a connection with AWS and you should show up as a first degree connection of employees. So, LinkedIn will basically reward you again and again for getting more integrated into the platform. And then engaged with the talent brand, that's the one for if you follow the company, you like the company's posts and updates, you go to their webinars, that type of thing will show you as engaged with the talent brand. So I know I'm going really quick. I am keeping an eye on the questions. So just like drop one in if one of these things is unclear. Cool. So the advanced filters, there's a ton. You can see on here, you can search by language, zip code, years of experience, years at the current company, military veteran, schools, degrees, fields of study, company sizes, like so many different things. Some of those will like auto populate if you have a job and you're associated with a company. It'll kind of auto populate a lot of those for you. But some that like you might not be thinking of adding that you should add, like any company you worked for, provide as much detail about your education as you feel comfortable providing. All of that stuff might help you stand out in searches. And if you go to like an HBCU or something, you definitely want to put that in there for education. I mean, you always want to put your education in, but I think like being connected with HBCUs, a lot of organizations that are thinking about like, how do we diversify the workforce? The first thing they're going to do is look at HBCUs. So definitely like a way to help yourself get to the top of the pile is to like think about these things and put them on your profile so you show up in the searches. Let's see. So the other thing that'll come up in searches is recruiters can make custom searches and they're called Boolean searches. You can always look up Boolean and play with that, but like what you need to know is it's keyword heavy. So the more keywords you're incorporating into your profile, the better. And if you're like, I don't know what keywords to use, I'm really unsure. Let's say you want to be a penetration tester. You might want to look at the companies you're interested in, look at their job descriptions, and then pull keywords from there. So this is Bishop Fox's job description. Wherever possible, I tried to use like my stuff, Bishop Fox's stuff. I don't want to put anybody on blast. So this is one of our job descriptions. It's on LinkedIn, and keywords you might want to use like vulnerability assessment, manual testing. Maybe you put DAST and SAST on there, penetration testing. Of course, you want to be a penetration tester. So just like quick glance, you can pick a couple keywords out and add those to your profile. If those are skills you actually have, bring those into your profile, whether they're words you use in describing your education or experience or they're skills that you add in. Just get those words onto your profile so that you're more likely to come up in a search. So keywords are great. Buzzwords can be overused and they can sometimes be off-putting. So when LinkedIn did a search of 31,000 marketers and tried to pin down the words that were the most overused, these are some of the words that came up. So it doesn't mean you can't use them. I think that there's a time and a place for a lot of these words, but I think it's always good to ask yourself, like, am I using the word synergy because that's something I'm actually creating in my job? Or am I just like throwing in word confetti? The thing I say for resumes and LinkedIn profiles is a lot of recruiters are lazy. You don't know if I know I'm putting my people on blast, but I stand by it. A lot of recruiters are lazy. You don't know if you're working with like a general IT recruiter. Maybe you're working with like a corporate recruiter who hires for every different role that the company has. And the cybersecurity role is something they only do once a year. That person isn't necessarily going to be able to sift through a ton of jargon, a ton of complex technical language. I think that in general, keeping it as like clear, concise, simple, buzzy word free as possible is going to help you stand out. And happy to answer more questions on like how many bullet points are too many bullet points for a specific job and stuff like that. Like I'll leave some time at the end. You can type them in, or you can always message me. So a lot of content I just covered there with the LinkedIn recruiter piece, but there's another thing I want to share, just another LinkedIn functionality, and that is Career Explorer. So Career Explorer is a tool that LinkedIn created to help you look at your job and then match it up to other jobs and see where there might be skill gaps. So it's not perfect. I wanted to look for penetration tester, keeping with the theme of the presentation, and that job didn't even exist. So the job that I used was security analyst, which can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different places. So, take it with a grain of salt, but at the same time, what I like about it is it pulls up the skills that are most commonly associated with the job. So that's really helpful as you're thinking about keywords and skills to add to your profile. It can also help you, explore different jobs and maybe explore different titles as you're thinking about your career search. There might be titles you're not using, or, I say this to people all the time. If you have a job where the title is just really non-standard, it's going to be hard for a recruiter to find you. So you might want to do some of this like career exploring, and then from there, see if you can find a title that's easier to access. And I will drop the link in this chat once we're done with the presentation so that you have the link for Career Explorer and you can go straight there. Cool. So the other thing that I think for a lot of you, like you're probably really tech savvy and enabled and already scrolling through LinkedIn and things. So, making your profile stand out, like everybody wants something that's visually engaging, and like recruiters might look at hundreds or thousands of profiles a day. So standing out is like seeing something that's just nice to look at makes me more likely to click and read everything and engage and message. So having like a picture is always great. Having a professional picture is even better. Last time I was talking about this, someone was like, should I go out and pay for a headshot? I don't think you need to. Like, just have somebody take a picture with a blank wall and good lighting, just fine. It's just not like the picture at a wedding where your friend is like kind of over your shoulder with a drink. Like, no, none of that. Clean, clearly you. Even better if it's in action. Like, sometimes people will have pictures from a conference or something. I love that. Branding it with your company is awesome. If you have a role or you're running your own business, you can use that. Doing something kind of like fun and interesting, like this front end engineer kind of gave a cute intro to who he is through code in the headline. Really fun. So just thinking about that, and then also thinking about the taglines. You can keep it really simple, like this profile that just says senior front end engineer. And then you can also, think about putting in more keywords, maybe telling a little story in a sentence or two about who you are and what you're trying to do. I think if you're early career, if it might not be immediately clear what kind of jobs you're looking for, then it's more useful to tell that little like quick couple of words story about who you are, what you do, what you want to do underneath your name. So will the presentation be available? I am totally open to sharing with anybody who's here or anybody who isn't here and looking later. I will leave it to Blacks in Cyber to help distribute, but happy to work with them to try to make that happen. And if you in particular are having trouble, you can't see it, hop by the Bishop Fox chat and leave me your name and your email, and I'm happy to email it out personally if for any reason it's hard for us to do it through Blacks in Cyber. Cool. So in terms of headlines and hashtags, I started chatting about this a little bit, but you know, the headline is one of the only things that a recruiter can see as they're clicking through profiles. So having a good picture and having some real information about yourself there is really helpful. So, um, this one calling out like what they're doing, calling out some of the shoes that they're wearing, some of the hats, I guess, that they're wearing. That is, I think, great. You kind of know who they are, what they do, what they're trying to do. So think of like what keywords fit you in your job search. And, don't be afraid to include 4 or 5 words that say who you are, like recent graduate looking for like SOC analyst position or whatever it is. Location, I know as security professionals, privacy is super important. I never search by zip code, by the way. I think that one's super creepy. I know I kind of showed it earlier, but something broad, like at least that you're in the United States, is important because jobs might be limited by, being like in the US. Beyond that, putting in a state is also helpful. If we're looking for somebody in Pacific time, it's good to know that you're in California. So we talked about this a little bit. Open to work. You can kind of decide what that looks like. If you're a new grad and you're like, listen, I want to make it really clear that I just graduated and I am open to work, put the banner on there. If you're in a position, but it's not the position you want to stay in, you can do it more privately and just kind of check that box and it will show up as a spotlight. So if you're not sure where to go to find open to work, it's on your profile and it's in the settings. You can also just do a quick search like, how do I add open to work on LinkedIn? And their resources are really pretty simple and strong to show you how to navigate that. So another thing to think about is if you go to your LinkedIn, what does your URL look like? If it's like got a lot of letters and numbers and it's complex, you can shorten it, which is awesome. So you can go through your profile settings and you can edit who can see your profile, and you can also edit what your LinkedIn URL looks like. And if you're actively job searching and you're putting it on your resume, maybe you're like going to events and you're sharing your card or something, then having a custom URL can actually be really helpful for that search. So and I know, again, security, privacy, I think it depends on where you're at in your search. But if you're really trying to get out there and get some visibility, you probably want to make your profile publicly visible so that it is just as searchable as possible. And hey, maybe you change that someday because you're getting too many messages because you're like a big shot and everybody wants to hire you. Then you can make it not publicly visible so recruiters leave you alone. So we talked a little bit about skills and how you can use that Career Explorer to find skills, how you can search for skills in job descriptions. So there is that skills section of LinkedIn, and there's a ton of options in there. Like, yes, some might be missing. And if they're missing, then just find a way to incorporate those words when you're describing your experience in the experience or about section. But a lot of skills are going to show up, and these are really searchable for recruiters. So you want to max out. I believe you can have 60 skills max, and you can shuffle which ones show up at the top. So if somebody's scanning your profile, you can shuffle which ones they see first. And honestly, use all 60. I say try to go for the big ticket items. So if you're looking for a security job, try to drop those technical terms in there somebody is much more likely to look up like C++ than they are to look up leadership, just super vague. So I say like go ahead, like put in as many technical skills as apply to you in that skills section. Um, that's just more likely to make your profile come up in the search. And if somebody sees you and is like, oh, actually, I need somebody with more years of experience, that's okay. Like, at least they clicked on your profile. Um, and I think at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is get as many clicks as possible. So, don't be deceptive, but you don't have to be a C++ expert to put that in as a skill. If you have some programming familiarity, it's probably going to be clear once somebody clicks on your profile if you are a new grad or you're early in career, and then they can decide, is that an acceptable experience level for them? There's also skills assessments. I'm not, there's many recruiters. I am not every recruiter. So I can't speak for everyone, but I don't look at the skills assessments that closely. So I would say if you're dedicating time to your profile, dedicate some of the time to making it like visibly appealing, to really brainstorming what are those 60 skills you want to use. I don't think you have to dedicate your time to the skills assessments. I think that's like LinkedIn trying to get you engaged with the platform just like as much as possible. If you are job searching and you have time, they're not going to hurt, and maybe you'll learn something along the way. So, doesn't hurt, but if your time is limited, it's not where I would focus my time. Recommendations. I know it can feel weird, but when I was really actively job searching, I did reach out to people in my network who I worked with closely, and I asked for recommendations and I gave recommendations. And as a recruiter, that is one thing when I'm scanning through a profile really quick, I will look to see if there's recommendations. And if they're from, a client or a VP or a manager, a coworker, like I'll read all of them and take that into account. And especially if it's from like a supervisor, manager, client, I'll be like, wow, this person must really do good work to have somebody take the time to write the recommendation. So if you're investing time and effort in your profile, this one is a good place to go. So as we talk about skills, somebody asked about LinkedIn Learning. I have used LinkedIn Learning. I think there is some really good content on there. I know you get that 1 month free. So like definitely take advantage of that. And then, I do think if you're early career and you're trying to build experience, it doesn't hurt to list some of those courses on your LinkedIn profile, especially since it might kind of help with the keywords. So organizations is another thing that's, I think, really great, especially if you're involved with diversity organizations like Blacks in Cyber. I mean, it's no secret that a lot of companies are thinking about diversity. And one of the ways that recruiters can try to connect with talent that's outside of their usual is to do things like I've seen some schools popping up in the chat. So, like looking at HBCUs, but also looking at organizations like Blacks in Cyber, Black Girls Hack, Women in Cybersecurity. They also look at sororities and fraternities. So if you're in a sorority, they might use that to help identify women. If you're in like a sorority that is, like associated with diversity, they might use that to help try and narrow down candidates. So it's a weird thing. Sometimes it's kind of an icky thing, but at the same time, the goal is to get your profile in front of as many people as possible. You can decide later if like it's the kind of org you want to work for or not, but at least you have them messaging you. So again, I think using anything you can to stand out. And, if you're actively involved in Blacks in Cyber, you're coming to the con, put it on organizations, and that might help you connect with an org that's really, trying to think more about diversity, which, that's awesome. So the other feature that I like even more than Career Builder is Resume Builder. So it's super easy. Underneath your profile, where there's the little more button, click on that, and there's like an option to build a resume. And you can type in like a job name, even, and it'll try to like build a resume that lines up with your experience and that job. So saves you some work, especially if you put a lot of time into the bullets on your LinkedIn recruiter, or sorry, on your just LinkedIn in general. I'm not saying like, okay, great, LinkedIn did it, done. It's a starting point. I mean, going a little further with the formatting, I think is important on a resume. The way that some things show up might not be correct and you might need to tweak it. But if you're like, oh my gosh, I don't even know where to start with my resume, this could be a way to just kind of kick it off and save yourself some time. So um, it's cool. And then I mean, the other thing is it also makes suggestions. So you can see that on the right side of the screen, me searching recruiting manager for the resume. It also dropped a lot of skills that they thought I should put in there. Yeah. So if you're dual career, I know that one's really challenging. I think if there's one career you're trying to focus on over the other, you should put that in your like right underneath your profile picture in that kind of about section. I think you can put in there if you're like digital marketer and pen tester, you can put that both in there and then put something in there like seeking a pen testing role or looking to build my experience in cybersecurity, to kind of let people know which way you're heading. I think the only time to like use a cover letter just existentially is if you have a story to tell. So if you're dual career, you have a story to tell, and taking a paragraph to do that in the cover letter, I wouldn't do more than a paragraph, keep it short, but to say like, my first career was in marketing. I'm still running like a small marketing firm, but I'm looking to pivot into cybersecurity. Or I also work in cybersecurity and like this is the career I really want to move into, part-time, full-time, whatever. I think as a recruiter, resumes and LinkedIn can be incomplete. So taking time to give us like a sentence or two to give us the story, the too long didn't read, the TLDR is really valuable. And if that didn't give you as much as like you wanted in the answer, feel free to like drop in another question or message me on LinkedIn. So quick profile checklist, things that you might want to think about, all that we covered, the headline, the cover photo at the top, the headshot in the corner, open to work, use it, don't use it, just don't forget about it. The about me, making sure to fill out your work history. Even if you're a student, you can put projects in your work history. You can put hack the box in your work history. There's no like laws here, right? So if you are early career and you don't have a ton of experience, you can put the things that you want somebody to see in your work history. Most recruiters, if they're reading your profile, aren't going to be like, wait a second, I thought you had 5 years experience because you put 5 years of hack the box experience there. If they're reading your profile, they'll get to the gist. So use that section as you need it. Skills, use all of them. Recommendations, think about asking for them, even though it's not always comfortable. And then, use that featured content section to put what you want there. So you have cool projects, you're creative, you have a portfolio, use it. But know that if you put it up, we're probably going to click. So if you put a GitHub up and you have nothing on GitHub, I actually always click on GitHub. So I'm going to see that you have nothing there. And honestly, you're better off just not even including it if it's empty. So include it if you want us to click on it. And then interests, engage with companies, engage with those like influencers in the industry. It all kind of helps up your engagement score on LinkedIn, which makes you more likely to show up in searches. So that is everything I had. I don't know if they have to cut me off right away, but I am open to answering questions. So if you have any, feel free to drop them in the chat. Also, I feel like I talked so fast. So thanks for bearing with me. I know it went by really quick. Yeah, and they just said that I am safe to stay on. So yeah, if there's anything you want more detail on or any other questions, happy to take those. Awesome. I think we were perfectly on time. So thank you for joining, for engaging. Please, build your network and connect with me on LinkedIn. I see Laurent's in the chat. He didn't tell me I could officially do this, but I did put his LinkedIn profile also in the Bishop Fox chat room back in the general Blacks and Cyber. So please, you can connect with either one of us. And even if you don't send us a message, just being connected with us will make you show up as connected to Bishop Fox. And you never know what we're going to hire in the future, and if it's going to be what you're looking for. So expand your network and yeah, get out there. Thanks for joining, guys. Oh, I did just get a question. So if you're still here, the question was, how do you evaluate a candidate's ability to think creatively and strategically when it comes to cybersecurity? Ooh, that is a good question. Um, I don't, interview processes are imperfect no matter how creative you are in building the process and how much time you spend in it, there's always going to be variables that we can't control for. So when we're looking for people and just kind of trying to see, like, are they able to kind of think creatively and how they approach a problem, we're probably going to ask more open-ended questions. So if you're the person, the interviewee, the person being interviewed, before you go in, you probably want to think of those examples, like what are some of your greatest hits? So you're going out for a pen tester role. What are your greatest hacks? It doesn't matter if it was like for a bank because you've been doing this for 20 years, or if it's on Hack the Box and you just rooted a new box and it was the most challenging one you did to date. Like, wherever you're at in your career, that's fine. But before you go into the interview, I think you should already have those examples of a time when you went above and beyond to kind of think outside of the box. So I think a lot of interviewers are going to ask you things that are open-ended, and it's kind of on the candidate to bring those examples that really show off their creativity or their ability to, kind of be strategic in how they approach a problem. So hard, I think, to capture that in LinkedIn. But, I've seen people put projects up there or under a job, give me a sentence or two about like a really cool problem they solved, especially if you can tie data to that. That can hold a lot of weight. So I think don't be afraid to like use those bullet points to highlight your greatest hits versus just highlighting like a skill, like uses Microsoft Office Suite or something. Like, actually tell me, like, was responsible for a 50% increase in productivity by implementing, whatever you implemented. Certs or degrees better. Some of the best hackers I know don't have degrees, and I think this is true for software engineers. It's true for, security professionals at large. That being said, some of them also don't have certs. So I think a lot of what they're looking for in the tech industry is what you can do. So if you have a degree, but you haven't been trying to like get in the weeds and actually build things and break things and really like engage with the stuff you're studying, then the degree can be meaningless, right? Like, what are you actually learning and what are you actually doing? And if you're going for a cert like the OSCP that has you doing hands-on labs, then like you're learning and you're doing something, and that's going to be helpful for the job. So I think if it's a degree or if it's a cert where you're just checking the box, where you're like, oh, if I memorize this stuff, I can check the box. Well, like, hiring managers also know that that might be how you can get that degree. I think it all comes down to like how it actually impacts your ability to do the work. So I feel like a mom saying like it's all about like what you put in, but it is about like what you put in. Like, you can get a 4-year degree and phone it in and not learn that much, or you can spend 1 year in coursework, but not graduate, but really actively engage and do a ton of work on your own and be a better candidate because like you're really in the weeds and engaging with it and doing a lot of personal projects. What certs are most in demand? So if you're trying to be a pen tester, yeah, I agree. It depends on the niche. Let's say you're trying to be a pen tester. You're trying to be a pen tester, something like the OSCP. I know it's hard. I know it's really hard and it's a lot of work, but if you're like a new grad with an OSCP, it shows me that you can definitely like put in the work and that you're not you can suffer a little bit, and hacking is also suffering a little bit. So for us, I think it shows that you'll put in the work and you have some of that hands-on labs and stuff. Ooh, for SOC or security management for certs, I I can't I haven't those aren't roles that I hire for regularly. So I don't feel like I should give you the be all end all advice on that. Um yeah, anybody else in the chat who has better feedback on that should hop in and answer. Cool. Any other questions? And also the question on the soccer security management, feel free to message me on LinkedIn. I do have a recruiter friend who hires for that directly. I'm happy to shoot her a message and ask her for her thoughts, share that answer with you. So yeah, I can reach out a little bit. She's super prompt. I bet I'll have you something by early next week. So shoot me a message on LinkedIn and I'll try to get you a better answer. Cool. Yeah. Anything else? Awesome. Yeah, Security Plus is, I think that if you really engage with the material, there's definitely things to be learning there. And then, yeah, the GIAC, I see that one a lot, but happy to ask around. And yeah, that's it. Thanks for joining and thanks for being so active in the chat. I know it's getting late in the day on the East Coast, so I'm glad you stuck around. I hope that it was helpful. Like I said, shoot me messages. I'm probably signing off shortly after this, but I'll be back on Monday and I'm happy to connect with any job searchers and help out. So, yeah, thanks again for having me and thanks for joining.